It was back in 1959, so long before I was born. My mother and father-in-law gave birth to a little boy, their firstborn, and his name was Greg. He was 4 months old when they discovered that he had Down syndrome. The doctors were very persistent, saying that they shouldn't keep him, that they should place him in an institution. In that day and age, that's what people did, most everyone. They really went against that. They fell in love with this little boy they had for 4 months, and there was no way they could imagine not having him in their lives. They just adored him. And so every time they went to the doctors, it was a persistent, are you sure you want to keep him at home? That's not going to be best for your family, and your future children will be too embarrassed to ever bring their friends home, and it's going to ruin your marriage, they were told. He'll never be like the other children, and they just knew that's not what they were going to do. So they made a decision to give him the very best life that they could. You know, back in a time when they didn't know how to care for these children at home because they never were at home. And now they were forced to figure out, so how are we going to make the best life for him? Well, besides giving him other children that were obviously going to benefit him, they also, it was like early therapy. They called it creep and crawl. They were different types of early interventions that they did to help him get his muscles stronger, you know, things like that. When Greg was born, he had a heart condition, and it's a condition that these days would be repaired really pretty easily. But at that time, children with Down syndrome or other conditions, they didn't operate on them. And so Greg lived to the age of 18 years old. And following his birth, there were 5 other children that were born. And he was truly the love of their lives. He transformed their family into this beautiful and beautifully faith-filled family. His death just really left a big hole in their hearts and in their lives. And it really made them reach out and help other people then that also had special, you know, needs and other challenges as well. And I believe that's where they became a very compassionate family. So our story, I would say, started way back at the birth of Greg, back in 1959. And my husband just loved his brother so much. And, you know, we already had 6 children at the time. And we felt this calling, you know, to adopt a child specifically with Down syndrome. And we were very fortunate that we came across this newborn, this little red-haired, blue-eyed boy named Ricky.
Orange. What's this?
He also had a heart condition. He had it repaired before he was a year old, and he's a healthy boy, a very healthy boy. He brings such joy to our lives. You know, a lot of people asked us, you know, are you sure you can handle baby with a heart condition? Or what if he doesn't make it? And I thought, you know, this boy deserves the love that every other child deserves. And if he's with us for 6 months, then he's with us and he's loved for 6 months. And hopefully that's not the case. I mean, we have the medical care that we can handle a lot of things. Indeed, of course, that was the case. But I was a nurse, and that helped, of course. I really felt like I could take on, you know, whatever needed to be done. And the reality is, when you have a child that has a need, you become a nurse. You understand them, you love them, you give them anything that they need. You take on that task. Ricky loves to make people laugh, for one. He's just a little entertainer. He loves music. He likes to play guitar. He likes to hold the microphone. He likes to tell jokes, and he likes to dress up and perform. He'll show off his sign language. His sign language, he knows so many words that when I don't know a word, I ask him and he tells me how to say something, which is very handy. He's active. He enjoys being active. When we adopted Ricky, I knew with his, you know, just needing some more therapy and things, I thought that, yes, my family would be complete. I mean, look at this little boy. He's a doll. He brings so much joy to our family. But it was a few years back when all of a sudden we started feeling this tug again. It was after the earthquake in Haiti, and we decided that, you know, we could open our home to a child that was in need, maybe lost their parents. And it was at that time, though, we somehow ended up finding ourselves looking at a child, or the need of a child in Ukraine. And again, we were drawn to a child with Down syndrome. So we adopted another little boy with Down syndrome. His name is Stas. We actually landed on Ukrainian soil to adopt Stas on his 3rd birthday.
Aww.
So we met him just a few days later. Stas spent all of his life in an orphanage, and those first several years of life are so important in the development, in the brain and with the muscles, just everything, the whole body. Those first 3 years are so important that these children are stimulated, that they have people talking to them, that they have just a lot of interaction and a lot of touch. Touch is so important for these kids, for everybody, right? For everybody, everybody needs that, but a special touch for these kids. He didn't get the love of a family, which is what's so crucial.
Go, please, please, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Part of what I think happened with Stas is that he had a lot of fluid in his ears when he came, and he wasn't hearing anything. And so that ability to communicate was really lacking as well. Perhaps had he have been able to hear more, he would have been able to talk more. Stas likes to clean. Stas likes to walk around the house and clean things. They're able to work with electronics and go from different games to, different applications. Both of them can find things on the devices better than I can. Every human being has 23 pairs of chromosomes, one from their mother, one from their father, for each of these. And that 21st chromosome in a child or person with Down syndrome, they have 3 of those chromosomes for whatever reason. There's different types of Down syndrome, but in the end, they all have 3 21st chromosomes. As a result of that, there are certain characteristics that these wonderful people acquire. And, a lot of people look at the differences of a child with Down syndrome or a person with Down syndrome, but really they're so much more like us than they are different from us. But some of the characteristics that people notice are their facial features. The smaller eyes, they say almond-shaped eyes. Their ears are a little lower. Their leg muscle, their femur bone is shorter. There's a different set of physical conditions that can go with it, like the low muscle tone, very common. And their joints then are a little bit weaker.
Good job! Good work. Go, Stas, go!
Heart conditions, 40% of people with Down syndrome have a heart condition. Ears, they're more likely to get fluid in their ears, and because of the low muscle tone, sometimes in their gastrointestinal tract, there's also maybe reflux, because of that, some bowel issues. Most all of those things are things that with good medical care, they can be taken care of. As far as the low muscle tone, Ricky, I think he could beat any child his age in a race. He's a strong boy.
Yeah. Yay, Ricky!
When we first got Stas, if you holding hands, he was kind of wobbly legs, and he learned to walk very quickly, starting physical therapy.
On here, under the trampoline. Oh, okay, let's show Mommy how we jump. Ready? And so we really work a lot on getting him strong in his core, in his stomach. Time. Here you go. Goodbye. 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 Woo! Okay. Get the floor. Go get the floor. Touch it. Yay!
Datran sa pula, Stas.
Come on up. Ooh!
Children with Down syndrome tend to fall in what they would call a mild to moderate mental delay. There are some kids that, you can hardly tell that they have these delays, and others that there's a significant difference between them and a typical child. Most kids, kids in the United States anyway, they, like I said, the physical therapy and all of those different therapies, they start in the home through the school district perhaps, but these are kids that are going to school, at the age of 3. Ricky started, and Stas actually too, started preschool, and they did a couple years of preschool. Then here at age 5 and 6, they started kindergarten. They're in the same kindergarten class together, and they're with a group of typical children, and then they get pulled away to go into, it's called a resource room or a special room, where they work, specifically on math at their level. So counting, or writing, just learning to form the strokes with a pen and paper, a pencil and paper.
Go. Can you point?
Good job.
The reason why the classroom is so important is obviously so that they learn, basic things like their ABCs and learn to count, learn to write, and just draw. I mean, every kid loves to draw pictures with crayons and pencils. They have artwork that they come home with every day. So while the other kids in the class are painting, so are Ricky and Stas painting. When they're learning their ABCs, sure, somebody's holding their hand and they're doing it with them. But Stas comes home with pictures. He writes his name every day. They make him write his name and they trace over and over and over his name. He'll learn how to do his name. It won't probably be perfect, but he's going to do his name, and Ricky the same. Ricky knows all of his letters when he looks at them. We have conferences with the teacher, both his special education teacher and then the teacher of the kindergarten classroom. And we meet with the different therapists as well. But the one thing that the kindergarten classroom teacher, she gives her report on how Ricky and Stas are doing in the classroom. She talks about how they're doing, but she focuses a lot on how the rest of the class is doing, how they're doing with Ricky and Stas. Because to her, she said that's just as important as how Ricky and Stas are doing. And she'll tell me stories. Lucas came up to Ricky and asked him to read a book, or Stas was doing some work and some kids were saying, oh, look at what a good job Stas did. So she just delights when she sees that because she wants them to be a part of that classroom, just like every kid in that classroom, because that's really how the world becomes a better place, right? When we learn to accept everybody, regardless. We all have some sort of need in some way or another, and Ricky and Stas have their own set of needs, and if all the children in the classroom can accept them, their lives are going to be better too. The boys also have occupational therapy. Occupational therapy is really learning to do functional skills, everyday functional skills, right? So being able to hold a pencil, to hold a fork, to hold a toothbrush, right? These are all things that they need to do to get from waking up in the morning to going to bed at night. And because they'll someday be independent, to some degree, this is what they need to learn. And so when they go to occupational therapy, they love it. They love therapy. They're using scissors. They're cutting paper, following the line, painting, and learning to write their name. In order to write your name, you need to learn how to make strokes that are straight, and you need to learn how to make curved strokes. So just those basic things through play, they're doing all of these, they're learning.
Go. You do it.
As an occupational therapist, we look at work as play.
Wipers on the bus go swish, 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 swish. The wipers on the bus.
We're working on helping them learn how to climb.
Stas, do you like it? Do you like it? Yes.
To crawl through a tunnel, to manipulate buttons on a shirt. It's all work, but really their job is to play. And so that's what we're really helping them, is to learn how to play.
3. 1, 2, 3. Is that fun?
Ricky started speech therapy when he was very young, and more so learning to work on the joint muscles. So they have like chewing devices, and they have them bite 10 times by putting this in the back of their teeth and biting down. And because their muscle, their joints are weak, they tend to slide their jaw, and it's important for them to be able to have nice, strong jaw. So, it doesn't sound like speech, right? But learning how to close your mouth properly, learning how to use your muscles properly in the joint is just so important to eating, but then also to speaking. Things that they do in speech therapy also are blow bubbles. And we think, okay, blowing bubbles is just something that kids do for fun. But when you talk, you have to decide when you're going to let the air come out of your mouth. That's how speech works. So when you open your mouth wide and you have air come out, it makes a certain sound, or bah makes a certain sound. But you have to be able to know, I'm going to let air out of my mouth right now. So by learning to blow bubbles, they also learn to exhale on command, okay? Other things in speech, for a child that maybe isn't going to speak. I mean, there are some children that can't speak. Maybe they're deaf.
Adanba. Can you say Adan with me? Adanba. Good job, good job.
We don't know if Stas will talk. He makes some sounds, but not sure if that's going to happen. So for him, it also is learning sign language. And so we have things at home that we do to teach him sign language. They work with him in school and in therapy, teaching him to talk, teaching him to communicate the way that he can communicate. We often ask ourselves, what would we do without Ricky and Stas? We always say life would be really boring, you know. They bring so much joy to our lives. All of us, you know, my oldest son down to my youngest daughter, who's just older than Ricky, to the people, you know, the people, our friends. It's frequently said that when a child, one of these neat kids, comes into a room, that the whole room lights up. You know, there's just like the sun that shines in the room. And I know that's true. You know, I feel like they have a special connection to God. And I think that brings us one step closer to God too, when we're able to spend time with them. You go to sleep. Ricky, can you bow?
Who's more? Stas more? Who's my cutie boy? Good morning, Stassi. Where's my boy?
Woo! 2 for 1!